right. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Real Talk with Michelle podcast. We're here with Dr. SunAh Laybourn. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. And even though I know people are listening on audio, I just have to say you look absolutely radiant. You are glowing. I wanted to say that earlier, but I'm glad to say it now, while it's official and on the record, because you look absolutely radiant.
Thank you so much. That is so nice. You look
it's
wonderful.
True. It had to be said. It already existed, but it just needed to be shared with the listeners as well.
Thank you so much. I was when I was thinking of people that I wanted to have on, you sit down and you're like, all right, I want to reach out to some people, but who? And then I was just walking around the house and I was like, duh, SunAh, I have to, I you just give so much energy online. All your content resonates with me. I adore you. I'm this is my friend in my head. I'm we have a lot of mutual friends, but I'm this is my friend in my head. So I'm she has to come on. You have so much good to share with people, and I wanted to connect in that way. Like you said, I did a good intro for you, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to just, introduce yourself to the guests.
Sure, yeah. So my name is SunAh Marie Laybourn. Look, the whole name, because I'm always going back and forth between just SunAh Marie and then SunAh Laybourn. That is my whole name. But
yes.
How you have that split between the professional and the personal professional.
I'm doing the same here lately. I'm who knows how to say my last name, which one I use? I'm trying to figure that out because I'm I don't want to have to keep spelling my last name or trying to say it over, but I understand.
Yes. So I am a professor. I have my PhD in sociology, which just means I am really interested in society and people and groups of people and why we do the things that we do. And I'm also a goal-setting coach, an encourager, and I really love food and food and exercise. So I guess that's good. Balance.
Yes. You have to be able to do both. If you like food, you gotta know how to negate it a little bit. Not punish yourself, but keep it moving, or else the food sticks where it goes.
Yes.
This is awesome. Well, I was gonna just go ahead and jump in because I have you for a little bit of time. I wanted to, your story intrigues me. I've been following you since you kind of started to share your journey with figuring out your heritage. And I wanted to let you talk a little bit about your early life experiences, being an immigrant adoptee. And it was I'm pretty sure it was a white family. Were you guys originally in Memphis? When you...
Yes. So, okay. I love that you say immigrant and adoptee because, it's frequently the case for international adoptees that we often don't feel like immigrants because we're typically not in an immigrant community, right? We don't have those connections.
Yes.
And oftentimes adoptees are seen as a very distinct type of immigrant, right? So not so much that idea of who an immigrant is in our kind of national imagination, but instead seen as family members to Americans. And so this becomes complicated because, those cute internationally adopted children become adults and we are seen as the immigrants that we are, but we're often not prepared to handle kind of the assumptions and expectations that people have of a quote unquote immigrant.
Right, because you've grown up in a normal sense of an American family, and then once you're an adult, you're looked at completely different once you're out of that, out of that context. Is that what you mean?
Right, absolutely. So as international adoptees, even though we do in fact immigrate, right, to the United States, there is paperwork that is, documenting our right, quote unquote, to be here, or a legal status, I should say, to be here. We are raised typically within domestic American families. So we grow up thinking of ourselves as kind of a domestic American,
right.
And not having those connections, those international connections. And so that was definitely the case for me. Yes, I was adopted by a white family. A military couple. So originally spent the first couple years of my life in Japan, where my dad was stationed with the U.S. Marines, and then, to the U.S., and then finally to Memphis because my parents wanted to be close to family. And so my mom's side of the family is from Memphis and kind of that northern Mississippi area.
Oh, wow.
My dad's side from Wisconsin. And it came down to a question of, all right, whose family, where are we going to be?
Right. And that's totally different spectrums of how your life is going to go.
Exactly. And I do think about that quite frequently because my dad's side of the family, like I said, from Wisconsin, rural Wisconsin. I mean, there are not too many big metropolitan areas in Wisconsin anyways, but they were from very rural area, farming, family. And I could have been a totally different person. But my mom was like, it's too cold. And I'm just so happy she said that because it is too cold.
Right. It's, first of all, my sister lived in Wisconsin for a little while. She was almost getting me to come there, to help with her son. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't think I can.
No. And, that's no knock against Wisconsin. But, I can think about the times that we spent, summers and Christmas, and I could probably count on one hand the number of people of color I saw throughout my entire childhood and even into early adulthood there. And so that's just very different than growing up in Memphis, right? A predominantly Black city. And, of course, a very distinct legacy of racism in the city, right? And so just a completely different experience.
Yes. How did that experience influence you to kind of go into studying sociology and kind of getting involved in diversity inclusion work? Because you have a major, a lot of work there, guys, accomplished in papers. It's great. How did that influence you?
Thank you. Yes. I mean, it was everything, growing up in a city that at that time was very much Black or white, right? There wasn't really anyone else in substantial numbers, right? Smaller pockets of, Latinos or Asians, but very different from how it is now with growing populations of a lot of different ethnicities, or at least in comparison to how it was, when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so that really shaped how I experienced the world as not being white and not being Black, and as those being the only options. Our experience, how we think about the world, how we think about ourselves, is very much shaped by our environment.
Exactly.
And at that time, my environment said you're either white or you're either Black, and people put me on either side of that at different points in time, throughout my childhood growing up. And so it really influenced how I thought about, my own belonging, my own place. And sociology is all about society and our social world, and also groups, right? So how do different groups form, boundaries, norms, traditions within a group? How do we make sense of the many different social institutions like school or church or the neighborhood that we're a part of? And when I started undergrad and was taking sociology courses, it seemed like, oh, wow, all these questions that I had, people have thought about it. And there is a way for me to think about it or to make sense of it. And that's what originally drew me to sociology.
Wow. While you were talking about that, my brain is moving through what you're saying and processing. And with you saying Memphis is very Black and white. Did you find that it was easier for you to relate to one side or the other? Were you welcomed a little more in one direction? There's just, maybe it's off question, but
no, that's a really good question, because I think I felt comfortable in white spaces because my family was white, right? And so the people, we first kind of relate to our family. And so I had that shared sense of, belonging in that way. But I mean, I knew I wasn't white, and I
Right.
knew how I was experiencing the world wasn't the way that like my white cousins or my white classmates were experiencing the world, because whether or not I really knew what it meant to be Asian at that time,
Mm-hmm.
people still were like, "You're Asian."
Right.
And so whether or not it held any meaning to me, it held meaning to other people.
Right.
So, I mean, in that way, it's kind of like I felt like I belonged, but I also felt like I didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I felt that way as well with my Black friends, too. Like, I felt like I was just another friend in the friend group, but I also knew that, I wasn't Black. I wasn't experiencing the world in the way that my Black peers were experiencing the world either. So there were still distinct kind of boundaries around how much I was a part of, these different communities.
Yes. Okay. And I noticed also when I was reading too that you pledged, I don't want to like make up one or whatever, but I know that you wrote about it. Can you talk about like pledging a Greek organization, like being a Korean woman?
Yeah. So, I think it's very interesting because to your question about where did I feel a sense of belonging, or where did I feel a sense of solidarity?
Yes.
And I think I very much felt a sense of belonging with my Black peers, and also a sense of belonging with racially marginalized folks who are experiencing inequality and being treated differently than white folks for no other reason than our race.
Exactly.
And so I felt a sense of solidarity in like fighting against that inequality and being joined in, some sort of movement against those inequalities and alleviating those inequalities. Mm-hmm. So I did pledge Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated when I was in undergrad.
Yes, I think that's what I thought it was. I just didn't want to misspeak.
So I did pledge, but it's interesting because thinking about it now, at that time it made sense to me based on kind of where I was in the environment, right? Thinking about in the community in Memphis. I went to undergrad in Memphis. So kind of like those same peer groups, those same social circles. Mm-hmm. So it made sense in that, again, being in a city that it's either very Black or very white, right? And being not white, kind of falling on that not white side, right? But thinking about it now, and I just recently had a similar conversation with one of my sorors, it's like thinking about it now, I would not have pledged a historically Black sorority.
Okay.
Because while, NPHC organizations are, open to all, quote unquote, I think there is still a meaning and purpose and an importance for all Black spaces, right? And I think as someone who's not white, not Black, still a racial minority, there's a space for us to come alongside, work in coalition. But I think that there is, again, a purpose, a meaning, and an importance for all Black spaces. And so as I think about that now, like I would not, join a historically Black organization, and I'm currently not active in my sorority either. But I think that also speaks to just kind of having a broader sense of race, but also a different understanding of my own Asianness, right? Which has been a process, as you kind of mentioned or alluded to before.
And I think that's a really great way to put it, because I think sometimes people think when something is all Black, it's meant to exclude other people, but it's like it is really important for us to have something that is our own, because that was really not ever afforded to us, to just have a space where we can go where it is us. And I think sometimes people will go about it just thinking that it's meant to say nobody else can like be here, but it really is just like we would love, like you said, to have people work beside us and still like help us like accomplish things, but to just have like a completely safe space where Black women can get together and kind of organize and do things for the community. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think in the U.S., we really are taught and learn implicitly and explicitly that Black space or Black culture is everybody's. And that's not the case, right?
Right.
We might be able to enjoy it in some ways or participate in specific ways, right? Or limited ways, but it's not open for everyone to have and to take ownership over. And I think we don't really think that deeply into it because it's been so ingrained in kind of national consciousness that whatever Black people create or Black people themselves are available for other people to consume or to, feel ownership over.
Yeah. Woo. A word. It's so true though. And sometimes we're just like, man, can't have anything. Sometimes it just comes to that. It's like, it's gone. Like if we put it out there or it becomes popular, it definitely will just kind of be taken over by the masses. It's not yours. Or just we could go even further. Just, the way like Black women are treated. It's like we are like not of ourselves. Like it's for everybody to consume, to have access to. And it's, it's wild. I'm glad that it's came to the forefront and like we're starting to be able to be like, no, like I'm my own person, my own body. Like I don't belong to you, because I've definitely had to reestablish like relationships with people. Like I don't owe you anything. Like I don't have to do what you say or be here because you say. Like I am my own person. I can object. I can have an opinion and it not be argumentative or want to do something for just these people and it not be looking at like I'm trying to exclude someone. Yes. Kind of want to like take it out of kind of interview mode. I feel like the first few questions I always have for guests are just really interviewee, but a lot on the show, we definitely talk about I feel like everybody's kind of starting to just kind of be conscious, just to wake up to realize like we shape our lives, everything that we do on a daily basis, like we can change any point in time that we want. And I try to push to people if they just kind of say to me like they're not happy with where they are and they're trying to figure out their whys, why they're here, what kind of work they're supposed to be doing. Do you feel like you are kind of starting to align with your life work, like your purpose work?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. And, I think you can only begin that kind of purpose work or that life work when you first align with yourself.
Yes.
So a lot of people will not be able to fully step into their life's work in a conscious way, right? Because we can still do the work, but not have that connection between the work we're doing and who we are. So I think, first it does come down to having a deep appreciation for who you are. And I definitely see that happening in my own life, in, embracing all of who I am. I talk a lot about like being free from shame. And once you let go of shame, then you can actually be who you are, right? Because shame says I'm a bad person. And so if you think you are a bad person, no one wants to be a bad person, right? And so if you think that, it really limits what you do, the relationships you have, how you show up in the world, because you want to hide. Like we want to hide the things that we think are bad about ourselves.
Yes. And those are the things that people end up liking the most because it makes you human and real.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think as I am getting deeper and deeper into knowledge and acceptance of myself, then I can show up for other people as well. I think when it comes to my own kind of like purpose, I feel like it is very much tied up in vulnerability, which I mention a lot. And like being vulnerable with myself first and then being vulnerable with others. And that's that showing up, right? Like when you show up as yourself, there is vulnerability in that, in being, in sharing yourself in that way, being exposed in that way.
Yes. I did. Vulnerability for me, I think, was maybe 2020, because I think everything just kind of imploded. It was no longer like you could hide from anything. I had went through some difficult things in my life with like a death and a divorce, and I had made the decision like right then that I was just gonna just tell everybody the truth. I'm like, this is what happened. Like, you know, we tried. It's the best I can tell you. I know you guys are connected to us as a couple, but it's not going to be like that anymore. Some of you are going to go, some of you are going to stay, but this is it. And, you know, people, we made mistakes, things happen. But I think if I would have allowed myself to be ashamed of that, like this new version of me wouldn't have been able to like come forward. Like I really had to say, I'm not ashamed of that. Like it happened. I gave it a good shot. I tried my best, but I will be happier moving forward on my own. And then just kind of even being vulnerable and showing like how my lifestyle changed. Like I live in an apartment now. I love it, but I had a house, you know, so like things had to, you know, be downsized. And I think there's shame in that for other people, but I just kind of looked at it like a new beginning. I was like, I get to start over. I get to like reshape everything from here on out. I find excitement in that. I know it scares a lot of people, but that was like my vulnerable moment. And I tell people, I hate it. It's really like, I like fight through the vulnerability. Like every now and then I'm like, my stomach is in the most knots, but I'm about to tell this story and try to get it out there because what's on the other side of that is always the best.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are the moments in which you know it's vulnerability, where you feel those knots in your stomach. And it is a moment where you can affirm yourself, because that's yourself saying like, this needs to be told. Mm-hmm. And you get to make the decision in that split second of, am I going to share it or am I going to bury it and hide it?
Right.
And yeah, and I, you know, in 2019, I made the declaration, vulnerability is my superpower. And it was an absolute lie up until that point in my life, because I had avoided vulnerability, like avoided it at all costs. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, I'm going to make this statement and it will be so. And I just remember so many moments where I felt those butterflies in my stomach and I'm like, well, SunAh, guess what? That means you need to say it. That's the indication that you need to say it.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm very vocal. I'm a chatty person, but I definitely knew that I was like keeping things down. Like, okay, I'm ashamed of this. I don't want to tell this, or people are going to judge me on this. And I'm like, I just can't keep doing it. Like I can't, because I didn't feel like the full expression of me when I was like hiding things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's very exhausting to hide so much, to deny parts of yourself. It's very tiring.
Mm-hmm. You are a goal-getting coach, which I like that. Like, it's not like goal setting or like it's goal-getting. And like that it resonated with me so much. I'm like, because most of the things, if I write down, I'm getting them. So I liked reframing that. Just be like, I'm setting some goals. I'm getting my goals. Yeah. So you're a goal-getting coach. Tell me how you kind of segued into that work.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for acknowledging the goal getting. Yes.
When I saw it, I was like, how genius is that? Yes, we're getting them. Like, we're not setting them. We get the goals.
Absolutely. Yes. And that was the whole intention behind that. Because I was like, goal setting, like, what is that? Like,
everybody does that.
Also, like, goal setting, you're not even sure if you're going to achieve this.
Exactly.
Goal getting, like, it's a different orientation. Like, these are the goals that we are getting. Yeah. We just have to find the right strategies and the right support to do so. One thing that I really have enjoyed throughout my life is kind of being in the background and assisting folks in going for their goals. I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that is one of my talents. I just have a belief in people. Mm-hmm. Kind of what you said earlier about like, we get the opportunity and at any moment, we can decide, okay, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. I'm going to change direction. Like, the limitations we have are really limitations of our mind. And what I love is when people are excited about a goal or, some direction they want to go in. And there's something about the excitement. It is the hope. It's like the human hope, that optimism. And And a lot of times what people need is encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't even take any special skill.
Right. Like, just to tell somebody, you got this.
Right. People need encouragement. And then oftentimes people do need help with kind of like routine tasks or mundane tasks, like looking up some information, making a phone call, doing something, right? Mm-hmm. That again doesn't really require specialized knowledge. Yes, you do need specialized knowledge, at a certain point. Right. But there are certain things that, are just kind of general assistant, kind of behind the scenes, groundwork type stuff.
Yes.
And if I can provide that to people, I feel really great because I'm helping you're reaching your goal. And I don't know, I just really love it. And so I was like, why not kind of do this in a way where potentially more people could benefit from it, and I can really share, what I've learned in playing kind of these support roles to different folks throughout my career. And so that's kind of how it started. It was really because I enjoy it and I want to share that with others.
I love that. Like, I don't think people understand. Last week, which I was just like, I was having a week, everything was rolling. I was like, I took something that you did say and I broke things down because I was like, long to-do list person one day, Monday. And then I'm like, no. So I did start like making like micro things, like breaking them down, being like, okay, so like you said, this day I need to call this person. I need to research platforms that I want to put the coaching stuff on, and like how to streamline that. And like, the week went really great when I broke it down into just giving myself 2 or 3 things to do, focusing intently on those 3 things and nothing else. Like, don't think about graphics that you need to make or just these 3 things, and knock them off the list. And I mean, that like last week went really great, but it's just, I think people get caught up in like the thinking about the whole thing. And it's like, you can't think about the whole thing. Like, you have to break it down, because each thing, like I try to remember, like each task that I accomplish pushes towards the bigger goal. Like, it's like how they say when you're manifesting, like you think about what you want, but then you keep every little small step you take is actually how you get to the thing, which I feel like you don't want to like blow people's balloon with like manifesting is just like actually doing the work, because they don't like to hear that. It's like, it doesn't just appear. The car, I would love it, but it's the small steps you take, like checking your credit, seeing what that is, and then, seeing if you can afford that car, or saving. Like, it's all what manifesting is. But every time I like hear you, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's dropping gems on the internet. I hope people are listening to this, because she's telling you how to accomplish your goals, your tasks, whatever you have set for yourself. Oh, let's see. I wanted to talk about, because I haven't listened to your radio show, but what's Let's Grab Coffee? It sounds so interesting.
Yeah, Let's Grab Coffee is dipping back into that research side. So I talk to different researchers and experts about their work and kind of what they know about the world around us. So it's just kind of like sharing research, but with the public in a way that is easy to understand and digestible, because so many people are doing important work, again, about society, about things that are going on. But it's often, in books or in articles that people don't necessarily have the time to read.
Or just even break down like what those terms would even be without having to, look up the words the entire time.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's more of just a conversation between myself, and usually it's one other person. Sometimes I've had a couple guests on at the same time, and we talk about everything. I mean, we talk about just whatever kind of their area of expertise is. So we talked about the blues, we talked about comic books, we talked about, voting, police brutality, math, religion. I mean, the topics are just wide ranging. And it's, every Mondays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on WYXR.org. So you can listen anywhere in the world. And of course, if you're in Memphis, then it's on 91.7 FM. And what I love about it too is that it archives or it's pushed out in the podcast format. So you don't have to listen live. You can listen on Apple or Spotify to Let's Grab Coffee, WYXR, and it's, all there.
That's good to know. That's pretty much how I listen to all my NPR, because I'm doing stuff when some of my favorite shows come on. But I love having them archived because I can just go back as far as I want and listen to it all day. I love that. Now I know I can find it. I'm going to look it up.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to go to the woo-woo just a little bit. What is your relationship with spirituality? Because I know we follow a lot of the same kind of accounts online, and I'm into when the retrograde is and what's happening. What's your relationship with spirituality, and kind of when did that start to happen to you where you were aware that there's something else?
Yeah. So, I think my relationship is ever expanding. Mm-hmm. It's growing. As a person raised in the South, my first kind of introduction to spirituality, or I should say really religion more specifically, of course, the church. I was in church, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday.
Weren't we all? I was waiting for the age where my mom was like, you don't have to go if you don't want to. And I was like, what? I'm staying home then.
Never was that presented as an option.
I was probably 17, and I think she was like, you could just stay home. But she also had my nieces and my nephews by then, so she was over me. She got to dress them up again in cute bows and stuff, so I was out.
Yeah. So, church was a big part of my life, a huge part. And even, in fact, my mom and dad met through the church. So definitely big part of, just my experience growing up. I was raised in the Salvation Army, which is a church. A lot of people are surprised to learn that.
Really? I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. So people might know the Salvation Army because of the thrift store or maybe the women's shelter or men's shelter or rehabilitation centers.
Yeah.
But it did start as a church originally back in 18 something in England, if I'm remembering my church history correctly, by William Booth, who was a Methodist preacher. And he felt like the church was really hypocritical because, they weren't ministering to, homeless or prostitutes or, the people out on the street. And so he started kind of his own offshoot of Methodist and called it the Salvation Army for reasons that you could probably guess.
Yes.
And it is kind of like a military-ish structure. But, I found religion to be very restricting and very punitive and very... I didn't get a lot of answers. As a child, you have a lot of questions. And I needed more answers than just... I needed more.
I did too. I went to Catholic school, and I remember asking, real questions. I wanted to know certain things. And now I can understand that, Immaculate Conception a little bit, but back then I was like, I don't know, how does that happen though? And they're just like, stop it, they think you're playing, and I'm like, I'm not making a joke, I just have a question.
Yes. Yeah. So I had all these questions and no one had the answers. And I remember when I was in, I think it was the summer before my 11th grade, maybe, or maybe it was the summer after. I don't remember. But I went to this summer program at Emory called the Youth Theological Initiative. And it's still going on, but it was just a month-long program. And we learned about world religions. And we went to different types of churches or different types of services throughout Atlanta. And that was really formative for me because it was learning about these different belief systems and seeing how people worshiped or how people experienced God or the divine or however, they were thinking about religion and spirituality. And I think that kind of set me, on a course to be more expansive and kind of not so confined within this one view or vision of God and religion and spirituality.
Yes.
So, as you know, I'm very much into astrology.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm always, right now we're in Venus retrograde, and I'm absolutely loving it. And I think, maybe, is it real? Is it not real? I don't know. But sometimes the things are, oddly
on
correct.
point. Yes. Sometimes I'm like, wow, yeah, that's definitely what's going on. Because sometimes if I feel it's getting wild, I'm like, wait a minute, let me check in and see what's going on in my little apps. And I'm like, oh yeah, well that makes sense.
Absolutely. And, I think, when I was younger, especially in the Salvation Army, because they have very strict, views on, no alcohol, no gambling, no astrology, all under the same tent.
Yeah, and it's not the same thing.
Right, it's not the same thing, not the same, impulses or same kind of orientations. But, I think, from a Christian standpoint, the idea is that nothing else should come above God, and you should not be trying to predict or foretell the future, right? And so I do understand that, because if you could tell the future, then would you not be God? But in the sense of, if we are created in God's own image, and everything that is available to the Father is available to the Son, and therefore available to us, then, it's just more questions.
Right. And then here we go. And then this is set up on the astrological system, which does exist. And there's a little science to that too. So I'm not discounting any of it. I always try to tell people, don't model your whole life around it, or get super obsessed with it, because I think that's when it becomes where what, the church might have you think it could be considered ungodly, quote unquote, because you're really, now you're almost worshiping and getting into thinking tomorrow's going to be like this, and you're living your life a certain way and not being a full expression of you. If you think you leave your house, you're going to break up with your boyfriend just because the article said it. So now you're just not talking to anybody, you're staying inside.
Yes. In that sense, you do have to be careful, to create that you're not creating an idol out of astrology. So I do think there is a balance, because anything to its extreme can then have that power over us to where we are at its altar and we are worshiping it. So it is balance. But I would just say, we have to remember that the 3 wise men did use astrology in order to find baby Jesus.
Yes, they did.
So, there is a space and place for astrology, and I keep it in its space and place. I think there was a time when I was younger where I was obsessive, and I probably was that person that was like, well, my horoscope says don't leave the house, or don't turn on the TV, or eat, 3 green beans tonight, and I'm doing it. And okay. So it was extreme at a point, but I think I'm now more in that balance. And I think spirituality, if God is the universe, there is very expansive, and it's not just the God that we might learn in Christianity, or, maybe in other religions as well.
Yes, I agree. My kind of relationship to spirituality definitely came with a moment of just where you kind of, which I call also a God moment, where you have with yourself, and you're just what is going on with my life? It just seems like things are on this constant spiral. And I kind of came into, I don't even know how it happened, but I just came into looking at something on the internet almost, and just, looking things up, and it just kind of being you were having this moment where I was needing to actually come back to God, because where in my younger life, I was just I am sick of religion. I got it in school. I got it over here. I'm learning Catholicism. And then I'm African-American Methodist over here. And it's just, I'm sick of that, because it was restrictive and I couldn't ask questions, and I'm an inquisitive child, to being so far away from that I needed to call God back. I'm hey, sorry, I took a little minute, but can you come over here? We could chat, because I need to get this show back on the road, get the train back on the track. And it just kind of let me know I can make my own relationship with God, and it doesn't mean that I have to go to a church. If I want to, I can, but I can talk to God which I maybe, like I was telling a friend, I'm like, I think I've always chatted with God. I talk out loud and I'm like, what's going on here? What should I do about this? And I think the whole time, like sometimes I would get answers to those questions by those supernatural ways that people say like don't exist. We're all like turn on the TV and they're like, this is what you should do today. And I'm like, what? Like I just said that. Like, so I take those things and I'm like, okay, there's something mystical happening here and I'm the catalyst for all of it. And I think I latched into spirituality that way. Like I'm a co-creator, like God's the creator. I'm in the passenger seat, or we're riding shotgun, and I'm gonna take back over my life. And so many things change. Like I no longer identified as being depressed or having anxiety. I realized like the depression is the past, the anxiety is too far in the future. Like that's it. Like living very present became like my spirituality.
Yes, I love that. And, definitely I've had those God moments where I know like this is God speaking to me through people, through dreams, through a variety of different kind of outlets.
Yes.
And sometimes we get to be those people that God is speaking through as well. So definitely that co-creator, position is ours for sure.
And it's so powerful when you realize that you have it. And it's like, how can I get other people to see this and like share a light? And I think that's just kind of how I came into wanting to do coaching. Because I'm like, a lot of people ask me, they're like, how are you? Like, what's going on? Like, notice the change. Like, what happened? And I'm like, I got to share this. And I feel like I was supposed to. I've always been a chatter. I've always been a talker. I've been told to shut up my whole life, all the way through school. And I'm like, I have stuff to say. So now I'm like, I get to share my voice and kind of help other people come out on the other side of not thinking they have control over their existence. Because that's how they keep. We were taught that way to keep us oppressed. So like once you can realize that, then you can come out of it and change your life. Be whatever you want to be. I want to ask you too, because I know you do so many things and I'm super impressed by them all. I kid you not. You will have a lot to say about you, but how do you balance all the things, your mental health, your self-care, your fitness, your schedule, your professor? Like how?
I only say yes to things I want to say yes to. I think when you start saying yes to things you don't want to say yes to, that's when you feel that stress, and that's when you feel that anxiety because you're out of alignment.
Yes.
So we say yes to things because it's expected, or we don't let people down, or whatever the reason is, but it's not an authentic yes. And we all know those moments, and that can lead to feeling out of balance. So to the extent that is possible, I only say yes to things that I actually want to say yes to. So that helps
That's
a lot.
Golden.
A lot with balance. I think the other thing is what you said earlier about being present. And it kind of goes back to what you said about like breaking the task down, right? Using that approach, because multitasking is a lie, and multitasking takes you out of the present moment. And so I think when you're able to be fully in the present moment, you actually experience more enjoyment because you're not separating yourself into so many different directions.
Yes.
Or trying to be somewhere other than where you are, which I think relates to what you said about that control, right? Releasing control. So being fully present. And I think about self-care in a sense of not bubble baths and candles and chocolate, although those are all great. But I think about self-care, and not just on Sundays or Saturdays or, whatever. I think about self-care as a daily practice that involves me being responsible to and accountable to my well-being. And so that might be chocolate and candles and bubble baths.
Right. Like if that's what I want today, treat yourself.
It might also be eating a healthy meal, getting that exercise in, putting my phone on do not disturb. And so self-care, again, it is that responsibility and accountability to ourselves, because we have to hold ourselves to the standard that we should be held to.
Yes.
And that is self-care, right? Being accountable. So it's not just doing whatever we want, whenever we want. It is actually being disciplined in a certain sense and being held, responsible and accountable to who we are.
I agree. That's very well said. Very well said. Because for me, I think of self-care in the same way. It's really not, honestly, bubble baths are not relaxing to me. If I'm in there, it's because I am sore. It's like, it is to soak from like a terrible leg day or something. And I might just read a book while I'm in there. But self-care for me really is if I'm just feeling out. Like the other day, I was like, I ate my lunch and then I was just like, I really don't want to get back on my computer. Then I like made a thing to myself. I'm like, hey, you do have something you need to get accomplished. But what if you just took 15 minutes, you scroll the internet for a second, look at something you find enjoyable. And then, after that, go back over to your computer and finish your work. And I did. And I was like, wow, that was really all I needed. I just wanted to lay out. The golden hour was happening outside of my window. I wanted to see the sun like set. And that was really like energizing for me in my form of self-care. And then I went ahead and like did my last hour of work. Like, so I try to do that for myself. I don't have like a very conventional schedule. And I think everybody thinks I'm probably just sitting around because I don't talk about every little mundane task or goal I have to do sometimes, because I'm like, nobody's going to find this interesting that I was just like writing forms for clients to sign. Like, it's not super excited to talk about, but that I probably do, because I'm home, a little more work than people, I feel like, some people anyway, who have to clock in, and most of them are on Facebook all day because I see them. But it's really important to me, and I'm always motivated by seeing you wake up, do your stories, and then you go and you work out, and I can kind of see you move through your day, and it's very admirable.
Thank you.
Motivating. Okay, well, I'm going to take a pause really quick so we can hear from the sponsors, and we'll be right back. Hi guys, welcome back to the show. We're still here with my guest, Dr. SunAh Laybourn, and it's been such a minute, but I am super excited to get back. I started maybe in mid-November, I actually physically had a gratitude journal. I have a journal and I write in there. It gets wild. It's like my free thoughts. So I'm like, my gratitude gets lost in there when I start talking about the rest of my day. So each day when I wake up, I put a little black notebook by my bed and I would write 3 things I'm grateful for. So when I open it, I can just read the things I'm grateful for and not have to search through my random thoughts. But on the show, we do a section that I call the Daily Gratitude. And I want to get you, SunAh, to just tell us one thing that you're grateful for today, or many, whatever.
Okay. Well, first, what I'm grateful for every day, and it's true today as well, that, we have the opportunity to decide what type of day we're going to have, how we're going to show up in the world. And, it's these choices each day that over time become our life. And that is exactly what you talked about earlier about like we have the agency to decide. And that's what makes me excited, because literally today can be the day that you decide I'm no longer doing whatever, I'm putting that down, I'm picking up something else. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
That's it. That's what I tell people. I'm like, I had somebody actually tell me, they're like, wow, everything you say that you want to be next, you are next. And I'm like, it's that easy. If I say like, you know what, I want to do coaching, and I like do each step on the process to like make it a thing, like, then I'll do that. I did the same thing when I wanted to own a business. I was like, I kind of want to work for myself. and I like researched it and did all the things. And having somebody else point it out to you, sometimes you're like, wow, you know what, you're right. Because I think sometimes when we're in it, we just think we're doing a thing, and other people are like, wow, you said you wanted to do a podcast, and then you have 60 episodes later. And I'm like, it's really just, you can tell me tomorrow you want to be an astronaut, and I'm like, well, what do we need to do? Like, have you started researching? Like, is it too late? Like, but that's a wonderful thing to be grateful for.
Yes, but I'm grateful for something else too.
Yes.
I'm grateful for us connecting in this way. And it is such the aligned time, because I have been thinking about you for the past month. And I was like, we have to collaborate in some way. And I didn't know if it was like, somewhat random DM, hey, when you come in town, we should go grab, brunch or something. I didn't know if it was going to be that, or if it was some sort of way for us to, cross promote each other. But it was in my mind, and I've been thinking about it, probably for like the past month. So it was not a surprise to me that you reached out, even though I should have reached out to you first.
That's
because
okay.
It's been on my mind. So I am grateful that the thoughts I had are shared, because you were thinking about me in the same way.
Yes, that's so. It's amazing. My mom is like, I think about you and you call me, and I feel like the same way about her. So like, I think it was only natural. Like, maybe you made it happen. Like, you popped in my head. It was almost instantaneous. And I was like searching around for your email. And I was like, let me just ask her for her email. I wanted to go about it completely professional at first. But I was like, nope, I got to hit her up, because she has to be one of the people. It's like, I'm not taking no for an answer unless she's really busy, of course. But I'm so glad that we connected too. And you can still DM me and ask me to go to brunch when I'm in town, because I would love to. I was like, I definitely noticed you because I am old friends with a friend of yours. And I was just like, wow, she's popping up. I was like, I hope he's not mad, because like, I like her better now. like you can move on. I'm like, I want to be friends with your friend. But no, you have a magnetic personality. Before I even knew you two would ever probably meet each other, I was already following you because you were friends with some other people I know, and I was like, I'm really intrigued by this person. Like, always, like, from back then. It's been a long time. I will tell everyone, I am actually grateful for today. I've been speaking about it online in vulnerable moments about being able to collaborate. So you're the first person who's scheduled and who I'm getting to actually collaborate with intention, really. And I wanted to go about it this way. Like, I've had guests before, but it's just kind of been people who are like, hey, I wouldn't mind being on. And I'm like, okay, like we can talk about it. But this was more of me like saying, I'm going to reach out to this many people. I'm like, setting this goal for myself. I'm going to reach out to these people. I'm going to hop out of my shell, be vulnerable, ask, because I have a big problem asking for things. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to collaborate and start to build community with other people who align with me, like are like similarly like on my path, kind of moving through things. And that's just made my heart so full these past couple weeks, just being able to chat with people and share our stories. With that being said, this is going to wrap up this episode of the podcast. This is episode number 69. Woo! 69. 69, Real Talk with Dr. SunAh Laybourn. And I'm so happy you're here. SunAh, tell the listeners where they can find you, because I've bigged you up so much, they got to know where to get you.
Thank you so much. Yes, you can follow me on Instagram At SunAh Marie Only. That's SUNAH Marie Only. Of course, I'm also on WYXR.org. Let's Grab Coffee, Mondays at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm also on Dope Radio FM every Monday at 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, dropping just a quick motivational message for your Monday. And also podcast, I Love Mondays with SunAh, available on all streaming platforms. Let's go get those goals. Tune in so you can get all the goal-getting strategies, mindset reframes, and personal development tips.
I love it. Y'all, you have to listen to I Love Mondays. Watch it, listen, subscribe, rate, do all the things. Leave her reviews wherever you can leave reviews. It's important for us podcasters that are trying to kind of come up and make our way in there. Yes, and I want to thank you again for coming on the show. And guys, we'll talk to you again in a couple weeks. Bye.